Chapter 5. The boy's light hair was longish, falling over his forehead in disarray. He had a nice face, serious, but with an unexpected dimple in his chin that gave him a slightly mischievous look. His body was nicely muscled but compact, standing. Jazz knew he'd be no taller than she. There was a large bump coming up on his forehead, just under the falling hair. The goal had probably slammed him against something. Jess jumped up and got a blue plastic cup full of water from her nightstand. She grabbed a clean t-shirt from the floor and dipped it into the water. Then she gently brushed back the hair from the boy's forehead. It was silky under her fingers, even softer than she would have thought. Jess kept her face expressionless and began to wipe his face with the damp cloth. He didn't stare. Jazz's heart, which was already thumping distantly, speeding up. She took a deep breath and kept wiping. Finally, although it probably didn't have anything to do with the water, the boy's dark eyelashes moved. He coughed, breathed, blinked, and looked at her. Relief spread through Jazz. "Don't try to set up yet." "That's what they all say," he agreed and sat up. He put a hand to his head and groaned. Jazz steadied him. "I'm fine," he said. "Just tell the room to stop moving." He looked around the room, blinked again, and suddenly seemed to focus. He grabbed her arm, his eyes wide. "Something followed me. A goal. It's dead." He let out his breath. Then he smiled wearily. "You saved my life, and I don't even charge," Jazz said, embarrassed. "No, I mean it." His smile faded, and he looked straight at her. "Thank you." Jess could feel heat trying to rise to her face, and she had a hard time holding his gaze. His eyes were gray and so intense, fathomless. His skin was tingling. Her skin was tingling. She looked away and said evenly, "We should get you to a hospital. You might have a concussion." "No, I'm okay. Let me just see if I can stand up." When she opened her mouth to protest, he added, "Jazz, you don't know why I'm here. It can't wait." He was right. Jazz had been so intent on getting him conscious that she hadn't even wondered what he was doing here. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. She helped him up and let go of his arm when she saw he could stand without falling over. "See, I'm fine." He took a few steps and then made a circuit of the room, loosening his muscles. Jazz watched him narrowly, ready to grab him if he fell, but he walked steadily, except for a slight limp. And that wasn't from his encounter with the gold tonight, Jazz knew. He'd had the limp from childhood, from when the werewolves took his family. How he'd been able to get over and join Circle Daybreak, Jazz would never know. He'd lost his parents, almost as young as she had. He lost his two sisters and his brother too. His entire family had been on a camping trip at Lake Tahoe, when in the middle of the night they'd been attacked by a pack of werewolves, renegade wolves, hunting illegally because Night World law wouldn't let them kill as often as they liked. Just like Jazz's old gang, the wolves had ripped through the Davis family's tent and killed the humans 1, 2, 3. Easy as that. The only one they left alive was 7-year-old Hugh, because he was too little to have much meat on his body. They had just settled down to eat the hearts and livers of their victims, when suddenly the one too little to be worth eating was dashing at them with a homemade torch constructed of kerosene-soaked underwear wrapped around a stick. He was also wearing a silver cross on a chain the werewolves had torn from his sister's neck. Two things werewolves don't like: silver and fire. The little boy was attacking with both. The wolves decided to kill him. Slowly. They almost did it. They managed to chew one of his legs, almost off before a park ranger arrived, attracted by the spreading fire from the dropped torch. The ranger had a gun and the fire was getting out of control. The wolves left. Hugh almost died of blood loss on the way to the hospital, but he was a tough kid and a very smart one. He didn't even try to explain to anybody what he'd been doing with the silver necklace. He knew they would never believe him if he said he suddenly remembered a bunch of past lives, including one where he'd seen a werewolf killed. Hugh Davis was an old soul, an awakened old soul, which was even more rare. It scared Jazz a little. He was human and she was from the night world, but she didn't pretend to understand the magic that brought some humans back again and again, reincarnating them in new bodies, letting them remember all their past lifetimes, making them smarter and more clear-headed every time they were born. In Hugh's case, also gentler every time. In spite of the attack on his family, when he got out of the hospital, the first thing he did was try to find some night people. He knew they weren't all bad. He knew some of them would help him stop the werewolves from hurting anyone else. Fortunately, the first people he found were from Circle Daybreak. Circles were rich organizations, but Circle Daybreak was for humans and vampires and shapeshifters and werewolves too. It was an underground society, as secret within the night world as the night world was secret within the human world. It went against the most basic tenets of night world law, that humans were not to be told about the night world, and that night people shouldn't fall in love with humans. Circle Daybreak was fighting to unite everybody, to stop the killings, and to bring peace between the races. Jazz wished them luck. She suddenly realized that Hugh had stopped walking and was looking at her. She blinked and focused, furious with herself for her slip in concentration. A huntress, a vampire, or anything else. You stayed alert all the time, or you were dead. You were miles away, Hugh said softly. His gray eyes were calm but intense as always. That look old souls get when they're reading you, Jazz thought. She said, sorry, do you want some ice for that bump? No, I like it. I'm thinking of getting one on the other side to match. He sat on the bed, serious again. Really, I've got some stuff to explain to you, and it's going to take a while. Jazz didn't say, Hugh, I think you need it, and I need to take a shower or my aunt will get suspicious about what I'm doing in here for so long. Besides, the smell is driving me crazy. Although she couldn't use her vampire powers without bringing on the bloodlust, her senses were still much more acute than a human's. E do gold, and I was just starting to enjoy it. Hugh nodded at her, switching from gentle humor to gentle gravity as always. You need to do what will keep your cover here. I shouldn't be so impatient. Jess took the fastest shower of her life, then dressed in clean clothes she brought to the bathroom. As she returned, carrying a glass full of ice from the kitchen and a washcloth, she saw that Claire's bedroom door was ajar and Claire was watching her narrowly. Jess raised the glass in a mock toast and slipped into her own bedroom. Here, she made an ice pack and handed it to Hugh. He accepted it docilely. Now, what is it that's so urgent? And how come you're so popular with goals all of a sudden? Instead of answering, Hugh looked into a middle distance. He was bracing himself for something. Finally, he lowered the ice pack and looked straight at her. You know I care about you. If anything happened to you, I don't know what I'd do. And if anything happened because of me, he shook his head. Jazz told her heart to get down where it belonged. It was pounding in her throat, choking her. She kept her voice flat as she said, thanks. Something like hurt flashed in his eyes and was gone instantly. You don't think I mean it. Jazz still spoke flatly, in a clipped, hurried voice. She wasn't good at talking about emotional stuff. Hugh, look, you were my first human friend. When I came to live here, nobody had Circle Daybreak would have anything to do with me. I don't blame them, not after the things my gang did to humans. But it was hard because they wouldn't even talk to me, much less trust me, and they wouldn't believe I wanted to help them. And then you showed up that day after school, and you did talk to me. And I did trust you, Hugh said, and I still do. He looked distant again. I thought you were the saddest person I'd ever seen, and the most beautiful, and the bravest. I knew you wouldn't betray Circle Daybreak. And that's why I love you, Jazz thought, before she could stop herself. It was easier to live with if she didn't put it into words. because it was hopeless, of course. You couldn't hang on to an old soul. Nobody could, not unless they were one of those tiny fraction of people who were soulmates. Wakened old souls were too old. They knew too much, had seen too much to get attached to any one person, much less a person who was tainted with vampire blood. So all she said was, I know. That's why I worked with Circle Daybreak, because you convinced them I wasn't some kind of spy for the night world. I owe you, Hugh, and I believe you care about me, because you care about everybody, she added silently. Hugh nodded, but he didn't look any happier. It's about something dangerous, something I don't want to ask you to do. He dug into his jeans pocket and came up with a thick packet of what looked like folded newspaper articles. He held it out to her. Jazz took it, frowned, then paged through the first few articles. Headlines jumped out at her. 4-year-old dies in coyote attack. Record heat wave in Midwest. Hundreds hospitalized. Mother confesses, I killed my babies. Mystery virus erupts in eastern U.S. Scientists baffled. There were lots more, but she didn't look at them. She looked at Hugh, her eyebrows drawn together. Thanks for sharing this. Am I supposed to fight the coyote or the virus? His lips smiled, but his eyes were bottomless and frighteningly sad. Nobody can fight what's happening, at least not in the ordinary way. And all that's just the beginning. Of what? She loved Hugh, but sometimes she wanted to strangle him. Old souls love being mysterious. Have you noticed the weather lately? It's either floods or droughts. Record cold days in winter. Record heat in the summer. Record number of hurricanes and tornadoes. Record snowfall and hail. It just gets weirder and weirder every year. Well, sure, Jazz shrugged. They talk about it on TV all the time, but it doesn't mean any. And the earth being disturbed, too. Earthquakes, volcanoes. Last year, 4 dormant volcanoes erupted, and there were dozens of major quakes. Jazz narrowed her eyes. Okay. And there's another weird thing. Even though it's not as obvious, you have to kind of dig a little to get to the statistics. There's been an increase in animal attacks all over the world. All kinds of animals. He tapped the pile of newspaper articles. This coyote attack. A couple of years ago, you never heard about coyotes killing kids. Just like you never heard of mountain lions attacking the ducks. But now it's happening, and it's happening everywhere. Prickles of unease were going up Jazz's arms, and it was true, what Hugh was saying. Not that she paid much attention to the human news when she was a vampire, but it did seem as if animals' attacks were getting more frequent. A bunch of elephants stomped their trainers last year, she said slowly. Dog attacks are up 400%, Hugh said, according to the California State Police. In New Mexico, there's an epidemic of rabbit bats. In Florida, they've had 7 tourists killed by alligators since last January. And believe me, that information was hard to find. Nobody wanted to report it. I bet. Then there are the insects. We're seeing more and more people get attacked by them. Killer bees, fire ants, tiger mosquitoes. And no, I'm not joking. They're for real. And they carry dengue fever, a really nasty disease. Hugh, which brings me to diseases. You have to have noticed that. There are new diseases popping up all over. Ebola, mad cow disease, that flesh-eating bacteria, hantaviruses, Lassie crimini Congo, hemorrhagic fever. You bleed from your ears and nose and mouth and into the whites of your eyes. Jess opened her mouth to say Hugh again, but he was racing on, his chest rising and falling quickly, his gray eyes almost feverish. And they're resistant to antibiotics, the same way that the insects are resistant to pesticides. They're all mutating, changing, getting stronger and more deadly. And Hugh, she got it in while he took a breath. There's a hole in the ozone. He looked at her. What? What does it all mean? The end of chapter 5, part 1.